the late Bill Graham, you know.
Oh man, that's great.
So I mean, it was so cool because you know,
so cool. I got yelled at by Bill Graham.
George we're playing. It was raining, and George came out, and the sun came out finally. So Journey comes on, and they were a good band. But like 8 songs into it, they're getting booed, and people are throwing stuff at them. So all of a sudden, poof, Journey was gone.
Isn't that funny?
You know. And they were just getting bombarded. So at this time, I'm up in the camera deck, and George had wanted to come and see
Why
the
was
Stones.
Journey? They were just not the vibe that people wanted, or was it real early in their career? Or
it was in the peak of the early '80s
like,
here.
yeah,
But you know, again, it's just a different mix of crowds. In
the
the
new
old days,
generation, you cannot escape. Don't Stop Believing right
No,
now.
you can't.
I watched.
Unbelievable.
My son was watching Palladia today, and they had the new Journey with the guy who sounds just like Steve Perry, except he doesn't look like Steve Perry, but sounds just like. In any case, you're going to see a Stones show. You got these older guys, they love George, and now here's these guys playing these top poppy songs, and they were just poor guys, nicest guys in the world too, just getting pelted with stuff. So George, this was like the first or second date on the tour, and George, I talked to him earlier, he wanted to go see the Stones. So I promised I'd come back and get him. So I come down from the thing and I go scurrying backstage, and the Stones were getting ready to come on, and you know, security is, and there I run into smack into Bill Graham and get in my head, what are you doing? And I explained to it, and then it was the only time I ever got to meet him, but that was cool. And I took George up to the crowd and we hung out and watched the show. And then we finished that night and went and saw Ray Charles at Kleinhans that night. So that was a ride.
wow,
What a night!
Yeah, but that was the thing. Those big shows. Although my personal favorite show of all the shows we did, and there was a ton of them in my 10 years of festival, but my all-time single favorite show, so I'm a huge Steve Marriott fan, or was, may he rest in peace. And we did Steve at Uncle Sam's. And, you know, it was the later Steve Marriott with like the new Humble Pie. It was on the Victory record. So it was still him and Jerry Shirley, the original drummer, with Clem, and I forget the other guy's name. It's a great record. You know, Fool for a Pretty Face that went nowhere. It's a great record. So we're doing them at Uncle Sam's. And I never do this because you try to act like you're cool or whatever. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I sit on the side of the stage? He said, yeah, let's go, whatever. I forgot that Steve spits. So you spend the rest of the night ducking loogies all night. Like, because you play this, you know, and you're ducking loogies all night. But it was the greatest thing, you know, like 8 songs last an hour and a half, you know. And by the time we got to 30 Days in the Hole and hit that last note, and the place is going nuts. Steve, you going out for an encore? Nope. That was it. Back to the Jack upstairs. So
Did you do Deep Purple at all?
we did Deep Purple a couple of different times. Another great bunch of guys.
How Blackmore was not
Blackmore was not.
persnickety?
You could never get near Blackmore, but Roger Glover and those guys couldn't be any nicer. I remember we did them up in Niagara Falls before it was a casino.
I remember I was at that show. Was that like 81 or something?
Yeah, it was like 81. They all blend together. And then we took them
show.
out afterwards, and the stories those guys would tell, and you know. Ian Gillan was great. His cousin James Gillan from Paragon. He's got a cousin here in Buffalo. But those guys were so great. But they would tell stories on how all the guys would go to see Blackmore. And, you know, so the guys would be off to see the Blackmore. In the meantime, the band would be taking all their girlfriends because the boyfriend's next door, and that would be kind of interesting. So, yeah, that was a fun in those days. The concert business wasn't so corporate. And the bands would have fun. Like I threw Bruce Springsteen a roller skating party. Or when we did Seeger in the 80s. This was a riot. So it's 1980. At first, I think we did 3 shows at the Odd that day, at that time. And they wanted to go bowling. And the Thunderbirds were opening up. So, you know, we take them to the old Arrow lanes, and there's Seeger and his little gang is on one thing. And so I'm with the Thunderbirds, you know, with Fran and a couple of guys over here. And this guy, tall guy, Don. And it doesn't register at first. Now, I grew up the biggest Grand Funk fan. I mean, Talus was a 3-piece band because of Grand Funk. I mean, I love Don Brewer. So, again, you got to keep it cool. You're not getting excited. It's cool. It's the Thunderbirds. There's, you know, Seeger or whatever. And all of a sudden, after the second frame, I go, I'm bowling with Don Brewer. And it was like, this is the kid. I learned how to play drums. You're trying to keep your cool and stuff like this. So I got to know him, and they were great. Him and Elto Reed couldn't be any cooler. So we finished the gig, and with the Thunderbirds, we ended up at Nietzsche's. After the gig and hanging out drinking beers. It was one of those special moments. And it's harder to do that now because everything's so corporate.
It's funny that you talk about not recognizing Don, but, you know, and this is something I tell my kids, when you and Dick and myself especially were younger, music was It wasn't video. It was audio. We didn't. There are a lot of cases you didn't even know what these guys looked like except for the back of an album cover or a circus magazine, something like that. So it wasn't like you were inundated with images of these artists like you are now.
Totally was. And you were thinking Don with the long hair, and who's a slightly older guy? Who knew we were going to all lose our hair or get gray or whatever?
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like this. It was just different. But Seeger's band, just like Springsteen's band, was always so approachable, and they were just a great bunch of guys.
Now you did some other stuff too, though. I mean, we're talking about all this hit music. You got to talk about Andy Kim. You did some bubblegum kind of stuff too. Come on.
And in the concert, this was later in the rock and roll days. Back when I was at 97 Rock, we also had HTT. So every year we would do some kind of reunion concert. One of those oldies concerts. And those are the greatest shows because now you got people past their prime. All the guys you wanted to see. I don't know about you guys, but I used to love Herman's Hermits. So we got to do Peter Noon. I got to do. Did Build Me a Buttercup. I just went.
Foundation.
Foundation. So, all of a sudden we come out, and here's the guys from the Foundation, like, you're black. And he was like, and you're white. Well, we didn't know. We started drinking. And it was like, it was a great time. And then Andy Kim, even though we would paint his toes a little funky, he was just one of those fun guys to hang out with. And we had to party and, drinking up and down on Chippewa Street.
I tell the guys in Joyride all the time that my career will not be complete until we can back up Tommy Rowe. Because I really want to back up Tommy Rowe so we can execute those fancy modulations in Dizzy. I think we can do it.
Yeah.
I think we can do it.
That was an all-time great tune,
It was.
A lot of those songs.
Yeah.
I liked it better than Hooray for Hazel.
Yeah.
Who
I
sticks
had
in
that
your
record.
mind as being just the all-time pain in the butt show that you did?
Oh, the top two pain in the butt shows forever.
Joyride?
Not Joyride, even though Dick is much nicer now. The all-time pain in the ass. Can we say that on the radio? Sorry, man. It probably tops goes with Neil Diamond.
Oh, really?
Oh my God! like
Just a prima donna? Just a total prima donna?
the odds full, and he hasn't left Cleveland yet because the Lakers are playing. And where is your priority here? So we're stalling and doing everything we can, and then he gets there, and you're backstage, and he's getting ready to come out. We got to clear the backstage area. Neil doesn't want anybody to look at him as he's walking out. You're going to be in front of 18,000 people in 5 minutes, So Neil was a pain, and then Diana Ross is just, luckily I got along
stories
great
of
with her.
Diana Ross being insane.
Stuff with, that sweet on-stage thing. So it's like flipping a switch, but definitely a prima donna. Although I got along great with her road manager and was peaceful at those kind of things. But those are definitely two of the biggest pains. A lot of times, I was doing a lot of the advertising promotions, and the bands themselves were great, but they surround themselves with these people that were so tough when you get bored on the road. I remember settling with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they were a great group, easy to deal with until you got to their accountants. And then I remember having an argument over like 6 cents.
Yeah.
Because you're they're just busting chops. I remember, here's 6 cents.
We had Def Leppard at the store last summer, and the guys were great. Management was just a nightmare. And Kim and I go to the NAMM show every year, and if we run into somebody, anybody we've ever run into minus the manager is perfect. If they're there with management of any kind, it's just, the management is just brutal.
It just cracks me up like that. And Def Leppard's are one of the all-time greats. I keep very few pictures hanging up around the house, but I keep a picture with Def Leppard when they were all still alive and all still had hair and all still had arms.
Yeah.
Because they were the nicest.
He did not just go there.
They were the nicest.
Thank God Phil's not calling us this
They
week.
were the nicest bunch of guys, and I remember doing a banner contest, and the banner had fallen down. And Joe Elliott, I got a picture of Joe Elliott helping me hang up the banner. No rock stars would do that. They were just the nicest bunch of guys.
They really are. We've hung with them. We hung with them in January, and we hung with them last year, and they're still great. They're just great guys. They're just having fun playing rock and roll, and thankful that they can still do it.
Yeah, and there's I loved bands like this that didn't let it go to their head, and were just down to earth. They made it fun.
Hey, did you ever, you talk about tough management. I mean, legend and rumor has it that Led Zeppelin's Peter Grant was supposed to be the toughest of them all. Did you ever have cross paths with Peter Grant?
I never had the opportunity. I was this close when John Bonham died. We had just broke the ad that day because it was on my birthday. It was September 30th. I was up extra early in the morning, had been to the news to proof the ad, was really looking forward to seeing Zeppelin and going through all that stuff. So the good news is I never had to meet him. The bad news is that they passed before we could. But
Talking about the Buffalo News ad? The ad was in the Buffalo News?
That was a big full-page ad.
You know
You
what?
had to follow the rules.
Kim and I have copies of that. We both have lithographs of that Buffalo News ad hanging in our houses.
I remember getting the call that day. It's like, you're not going to believe this, John Bonham passed. I'm like, you can't. My boss is going to kill him. We got a show going on set. You know? And it was like, wow, man, that was one of those shocking moments, like where Kennedy was, and it was.
Or John Lennon.
You know, oh yeah.
That was a big one.
It was interesting.
We're going to take a short pause, folks. We're going to come back on the other side of the break with more stories from Donnie and find out just how bad Neil Diamond really was. How bad could he be, Mac? Who we played into the break with?
It's some more old Ben hats.